Hello, Carol, and the rest of the Kron family and relatives. I just want to send you a short message, and I do this with a heavy heart. Charles was my friend from Vietnam. I met him in 1970, and we became fast friends. He was a platoon leader in a different platoon, but we still crossed paths and did a lot of things together and had a lot of laughs. On April 15th of 1971, we were involved in a terrible firefight with close to 1,500 NVA soldiers. We had a 78-man unit at the time, and Sergeant Kron, as I called him, was a platoon sergeant in one of our platoons during the battle. I was severely wounded trying to save one of the lieutenants that had come under fire. Unfortunately, my predicament was I was in an area between where our troops were and the enemy lines, and it was what they described as the kill zone. I was severely wounded. I had a severe chest wound, and there was fire being exchanged from both sides. Charles, he did not pay attention to any of that. He knew that I was out there and was wounded, and as he did all the time, Charles crawled under heavy fire to try to save me, to pull me back. As Charles bandaged my chest, rolling me around, I had a gaping hole in my side. As he was bandaging me and preparing to carry me to safety, he also became under heavy enemy fire and was shot. He was unable to continue at the time, and he was able to crawl back to the rest of our friendly unit. Eventually I was pulled out of there by another guy that was gracious enough to come and get me. The bond that Charles and I had the entire time in Vietnam cannot be repeated. The bond that we have as veterans and as fellow Delta Raiders, it is just, you can't explain what the friendship is. Charles did visit me some years ago, and he was amazed at the size of some of the buildings here in Chicago, and it was a very pleasant visit. The last time I spoke with Charles was April 15th, the 41st anniversary of when I was wounded and also Charles was wounded. We had a long talk, well over an hour. We laughed, we cried, we discussed what went on, and I will tell you this, I don't know what Charles thought of himself, but Charles was an American hero. Charles put himself in danger to come and retrieve this soldier you see sitting right here. It's something that I will never, ever, ever forget. I will always be grateful for the braveness and the courage, how brave he was and how courageous an act it was to come under heavy enemy fire to bandage my chest and try to rescue me. Charles is definitely an American hero. And it is with a heavy heart, like I said, that I'm leaving this message with all of you. He will always be my hero. He was a hero to every single guy in that company that knew him. He never, ever let one of his troops down. He was a leader of men in Vietnam. If somebody fell out because their rucksack was too heavy, it was too hot, they weren't able to continue, Charles would go back, pick the guy up, pick his rucksack up, throw it over his shoulder, and just carry him. I mean, that's the way he was. And that was unheard of for a staff sergeant to do something like this. But that's what Charles was. He was all about his men, and he came second. When I spoke with Carol about his this morning, and she told me of his illness, it broke my heart. And the more she told me about him, is the more I realized 41 years later that Charles has never changed. When he was offered dialysis, he turned it down because there was other people that had a better chance to survive that may need that chair for that dialysis. That was Charles. That was Charles all the way. He lived his life, obviously, with his heart on his sleeve, and that's the man I knew, and that's the man that we all loved. We lost an American hero last week, and the only thing I could say is how appropriate, if he is to pass, to be buried on Memorial Day. He is an American hero, and I want all you to know that what he did for me, I will also take that to my grave. Charles Kron is my guy, and I know that he's looking down on me now as I do this, because they have a special place for people like him, and I am so glad that I got to know him and got to love him like a brother. And I can't imagine you, Carol, how much you're going to miss him, because I know he was a great guy. So it is with a heavy heart, like I said, that I make this presentation, speech, what have you. But Charles Kron, he was an American hero. God bless Charles. May he rest in peace. And I know he's smiling down on us today. Thank you very much. Goodbye.